Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of HR Voices podcast. I am your host Mary Asante, and with me here today I've got the incredible Vicky O'Farrell. Hi Vicky.
Hi Mary, and thank you for inviting me onto this incredible podcast.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited today because I think it's always amazing and wonderful listening to Vicky, whether it's just her talking or her comedy, but I'll let Vicky talk a bit more about herself in a little while. But today we'll be talking about something that I believe every HR professional, manager, and business owner experiences every single day, but perhaps doesn't always stop to think about human behavior. Not policies, not procedures or employment law, but people. We'll be focusing on how we communicate, how we react, and how our behaviors affect others. Because every workplace culture is built one interaction at a time. So, before we go deeper into this conversation, Vicky, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Thank you, Mary, and I'm excited to be here because I talk about human behaviours. My business is the Queen of Behaviours, founded that 15 years ago, and I love the transformational part when you speak with people, and my biggest question is always, what's it like to be on the receiving end of you? Really stops people to go, oh, I'd never thought of it like that. No, you hadn't. And it is the human element of it. We can have, and we have to have HR policies and procedures. They need to be in place. But let's actually put those to one side and realize we're dealing with human beings and that we all come from our own lived experience. We all have different opinions. And I think sometimes what happens in the workplace is we get clouded by, was that an opinion or actually was that a fact? I'm just coming from a different viewpoint. And when we give each other the time and respect and the place to have that psychological safety to voice our opinions, we grow as humans and we make a richer world and a richer business, not just in terms of the profits and that kind of financial rich, but actually a richness in human beings that grow together.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you on that one, because one of the tools that I use is actually emotions and behaviors at work. And that always considered how your emotions and behaviors affect you and it affects others around you. So it's really closely aligned to the concept that you're describing, which is when you act in a certain way, it doesn't just affect you, but it affects everyone around you. And sometimes it provokes reaction from others that then creates almost a dominoes type effect, right? Which then in a team environment can easily get out of hand.
Very easily until but the thing is, a lot of this is in our unconscious processing. We haven't realized it's happening, and then sometimes it gets to the stage where it's too late. But actually a very simple thing can be that term of nip it in the bud by actually addressing it. Why do we find as humans we shy away from that part because we think it's conflict and it's going to be an argument, rather than me saying, oh, Mary, is everything okay today? You seem a little off. That might cause you to go, no, I'm not off. What do you think? Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to say that. As opposed to, no, I'm fine, I'm off. Really? You don't strike me like you're off, do you? You've come in snap and suddenly a very, very tiny thing can escalate. Whereas actually just by going, Is everything okay, Mary? You seem a little off today. And not doing it in a public, just to one side.
Yeah.
You might actually go, yeah, I know I am.
And I think that is really important because at the end of the day, if you actually take time as a manager to get to know your team, it's very easy to spot when something isn't quite right. And hopefully that will give you the space to be able to redress or address whatever issue that is at hand before it totally gets out of hand. Now, I do mystifying terminologies quite a bit, and although human behaviors should be obvious to all of us, I also like to know from your point of view, what is human behavior and what sort of behaviors are we considering here?
It's everything about what we do. It's not just the words that you choose, but the tonality in which you deliver it, body language, which isn't just your physical arms out kind of body language, but your facial expressions. Just simple things like actually hunch shoulders. Sorry, if you're listening to this and not watching it, I'm just hunching my shoulders up because I'm describing. Just just someone's whole persona makes up. So behaviors to me makes up all of it. Even the way I've dressed me, if for those of you who are listening and watching that do know me, I'm renowned for red lipstick and red fingernails. It's part of my branding. And if I turned up and I wasn't wearing and I didn't and I wasn't looking polished, if I turned up to a meeting, Mary, where we know each other through the Professional Speaking Association, you would know if I was off because of the way I dressed. Not even
Yeah,
my language. Before I've even opened my mouth to speak to you, you would know something wasn't right
absolutely.
because
Yeah,
you read behavior.
yeah.
And
Absolutely. And I think that is a really important point in the workplace where people show in, day out. And I guess right now things can be slightly more complex by hybrid working or remote working, where, okay, you may or may not see your colleagues in a long time because let's face it, not everyone turn up to meetings on camera. Some
no.
people may have their cameras off, but so being able to read people beyond what is actually quite important, isn't it? You touched on the tone. Even with my camera off, if you go, "How are you today, Mary?" you might be able to tell that that didn't sound right, or that sounded a bit off. And then maybe you can follow up with, "Mary, can I have a word after this meeting?" Or reach out later to say, actually, can we actually have a word? Because sometimes that is easier for the person to open up than asking them within a team meeting environment, "Are you okay? And what's going on there?" Because not everyone will be quite comfortable sharing openly with everybody else in the room, right?
That is definitely a key one is if you see somebody not acting as they would normally, don't pick it up there and then if there are others around listening. It is one of those, oh, Mary, I've noticed that's not quite right. Okay, so just a note. And like you say, either reach out or a direct message on the chat function, whatever platform you're on, just to say, is all okay over there? And it is little things like that, not just your tonality on a meeting if you've got your camera off. Is somebody normally very chatty in the chat function and suddenly they're not? Or they are chatty, but they're very one-word answers, and normally there'd be a lot. Or maybe they're not normally a chatty person and they're over chatty. It would just indicate if their behavior has changed from normal day-to-day behavior, then reach out to them because it might mean there's something going on. It doesn't always people was immediately thinking, oh yeah, but there could be something bad going on. I don't want to. No, actually, it could be that there's something really exciting going on for them. They might have just found out that their partner is pregnant, or that there's a wedding in the family, or their house has moved as exchange. There could be a lot of stuff going on that
Hmm.
brings different emotions. But can I just say, before you can do that, you've got to know your team. You've got to know the people around
Absolutely.
you first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, totally agree with that. Because if you don't, it all hinges on building of relationships, right? If you
yeah,
don't have the baseline established relationship with your team and you suddenly jump in asking questions, it will raise the curious question of what
yeah,
do they want? What are they about? Why are they asking me this question? If they know you, if you genuinely shown over time that you care for them and you've established that relationship, when you ask that question, they would know that it's coming from a caring place or it's coming from a good place. So
yeah,
they are more likely to speak to you. And actually, if they are not ready to discuss in that moment, you can always leave the door open, isn't it? For I am here if you like to talk or chat or
yeah.
anything like that.
And there might also be things that they do want to talk about, but they might not want to talk about them with you. And that is not, never take that personally and think, oh, have I done wrong that they don't want to talk to me? It just could be it's something that they need to discuss. And if you aren't HR, you're a line manager, just make sure that you've given them the guidance of if there is stuff that you need to talk about, know that there is, it's creating that whole psychological safety in the whole organization.
Mm,
People need to know they have somewhere that they can go and talk, because it could be, if it's, maybe there is a spouse is pregnant, but actually it could be that maybe they don't want to talk about it with you because actually the last couple of times they've been pregnant there's been a miscarriage or something, and they are excited but they've also got some anxiety about it, and therefore I do need to talk to somebody, because if I suddenly need to leave work or I need to go offline, I need somebody to know, but I don't want to discuss it with my line manager because that's too personal. It's fine, but you need to know that there's somewhere that you can turn to have those conversations.
yeah, and that is really a good point. Why do you think, on that note, that organizations underestimate the impact of everyday behavior?
Why do organizations underestimate the impact
Of everyday behavior.
of the impact of
Yeah,
the organization?
yeah.
Because sometimes I think, especially when companies grow from a size to an organ, they don't think about the impact of them. They're not looking at the human behavior behind it.
Mm,
And where we look at where we are in the world right now, we're in July 2026 when we're recording this. There is a whole lot of other stuff going on around the world that is impacting people. Let's take it back to the COVID times when we were forced into lockdown. There was so much going on. So everyone is reacting differently to situations because of
mm,
their own lived experiences. So
mm.
you don't know if somebody is coming into the organization that day, having heard some news about something that's going on in the world that's really impacted them. And I think sometimes leaders, managers forget that, and then we're just talking about constantly what's today's workflow, what have we got to get done. Let's not just go task side of things. Let's also look at the people side of things. And do we need to give people different opportunities? The big one, again, I'm going to talk about COVID because most people can relate to that. We
Yeah,
we were all forced into lockdown and working from home, which is not how humans should be. We are a social race and we need
yeah.
interaction, some more than others. But then when we came back into the workplace, that was another change that people had to go through, because suddenly I have been used to being work from home and now I've got to get on a busy bit of public transport, or I've got to go into a busy office with other humans I'm not sure about. I feel vulnerable. I've never felt like this before. Actually, we need to be really conscious of that. And then when I hear of organizations that are still now that forced everyone back, no, we need to be all back in the office because that's how
Yeah.
humans work better. Don't make it mandatory. Let humans decide. They were forced to work from home and you accepted it. Don't force them to be back in the office. It's understanding that we all come from our own lens. That
And
Yeah,
that is really a very interesting point that you've raised in terms of the impact of COVID-19, the lockdown, working remotely, whilst before COVID-19, lots of roles, if you spoke to the leadership of that organization about a flexible working request coming from the individuals to say, can I work either part or all of my role from home? The answer to most of them would almost certainly have been no, because you can't do your work from home. We need you in the office and all those things. But fast forward a few years ago to COVID-19, we actually, the entire world learned that there are so many roles that can be done remotely, that can be performed from home, and can be done effectively from home as well. So, with people getting used to the new way of working, where they can do their work from home, and I will caveat it, because not everyone enjoys working from home. Not everyone enjoys working remotely, but there are a good few or a good amount of people who really loved giving the opportunity to be able to work from home, to be able to work remotely and stuff. Then came years after COVID, when the cry of from organizations, come back into the office, get everyone into the office, get everyone into the space, raised a huge questions as to why. I've been doing my work all right, and it's been working all right. So why do I need to come into the office? Now we can spend time talking about the pros and cons of remote working and hybrid work in both organizations and for individuals. But for the purposes of this this conversation, one key thing that you've touched on is giving people the option.
Choice. Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I know that lots of HR issues that have arisen as a result of come back into the office. No, I don't want to, because I've been working this way for the past 2, 3, 4 years, and that set a precedent now. But your contract says your workplace is this, so you need to come back into the office and all that. But if we return to the human element and the human aspect of it, and actually, bottom line is, if you engage with your employees and have a good discussion about working patterns, whether it's remote, whether it's hybrid, or whether it's in the office, I'm pretty sure in most cases you can come to a conclusion that works for both parties or all parties involved.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's about giving humans choice, because when if you said to somebody, said, I'll need to see you in the office at some point because that's the way it is. When it works, when does it work for you? And then there are organizations that go, it's not about what it works for them, it's about when it works for me. We're the organization, we pay the wages, they need to come in. I'm like, yeah, but you're dictating then. If you tell people we will want you in the office, can we have a discussion about it and then give it to them? When someone's made the decision themselves, they are more than likely to stick to it. You're not going to get an HR issue when someone says, no, you're absolutely right. When it's this, when it's that, and blah, blah, blah. And the one company I work for, we came out after lockdown. I went into a workshop with them, and I went into the tea point, and I was just like, oh, there's a lot of young men in here. And I was just like, it seems to be lots of, and what it was these were all young men who'd had babies in lockdown, or their partners' wives had babies in lockdown, and they couldn't wait to get back to the office for some peace and quiet because their home wasn't set up to have an office and a child and all of this. And they were just like, I just need to get into work so I can get some work done in the quiet time. So again, like you say, it's not for everyone, but when we give humans choice, that what that does to the human is that automatically gives them a level of respect. You respect me as a human because you're letting me have a choice. Yeah, there are certain things that you don't get a choice over, but actually when you can have a choice, and when we respect each other, tend to find that people do more for you.
Absolutely, you do build a lot of goodwill, and then employee-employer relationships normally go bad when goodwill is sort of
Eroded.
non-existent or used up, and people then start working to rule and all those sort of things, and that's when you start having a lot of issues. Now, you often talk about the ripple effect of behavior.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's a little bit like coming to you when you talked about the domino effect. It is very much about that. If I came in
Mm,
to the workplace and perhaps I'd had a bad journey in and there was temporary traffic lights or the train was late or kid forgot the sports kit and I had to go, all of those kind of things, that can have an impact on how I behave and how I show up.
mm,
If I don't pause before I come into the workplace and just have a little word with myself going, okay, just take a few moments out because I know I'm acting out of character. I need to come in as Vic. Whereas if I don't, if I just come in and just, oh, this, that, and the other, and the traffic and I'm not just impacting those around me, I will impact them, and that it will have an impact on how they behave,
mm.
and that will then impact the people around them and further and further. So it's like a ripple. And
Yeah.
those things, I've worked with people before where you've sat there in the office and they're waiting for them to come in. This is I'm talking a long time ago when I was in the corporate world, and you sit there and we'd play. So we're gonna call them Mary because that's your name. We'd play Mary Bingo.
Oh,
What mood's Mary in today? And then they'd come in the office and you'd all look at each other, go, okay, we're safe today. Mary's in a good mood. Or if it was like, oh, heads down, Mary's not in a good mood today. And why did none of us tackle that? I'll tell you why
um,
none of us tackled it, because
mhm.
Mary was the manager.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is what I was going to say. And can one person really affect
Yes,
or influence an entire team? And yes,
massively.
but especially if that person is a person of influence or in a position of influence within the organization, a manager, a team lead, a supervisor, a senior manager, and the rest of it. Because when that happens in the situation you've just described, Mary being the manager, no one wants to be in the firing line that day, right? No one wants to be told off for things they may or may not have done or to be picked on. So they put their head down and try to get out of Mary's way, even when they've got something important and relevant to discuss with Mary. They would avoid
Yeah.
bringing it up on that day because Mary is not in a good mood.
So there was several teams in one office place, several teams that worked for Mary.
Mm,
And there was four in my team. And you find it was like about 10 o'clock and someone would go, right, I'm going for a cigarette. We're like, right, okay, the whole team going for a cigarette break. I didn't even smoke, but I'd be like, I'm coming for a cigarette break. I don't want to be the only one left in the team. Mary's in a bad mood. And we'd all go outside and Mary'd be like, where are you going? Cigarette break. Mary, Vic, you don't smoke. They get a cigarette break. Why can't I have one? I'm like, don't leave me here on my own with Mary. What? But this is the
yeah,
thing. Mary's behaviour needed addressing, but I didn't feel I was in a position to be able to
to
address
be
Mary's
able to
behaviour
do
because
that.
she's my manager.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you mentioned earlier about a place to go to, places or people to talk to, or how people can raise these things within the workplace, and I think in a good workplace, a good working environment where people feel psychologically safe, there will almost invariably, I would expect this day and age, to be someone somewhere or some sort of way of highlighting that look, this behavior isn't is quite or this behavior is affecting our team quite negatively.
Yeah. I'd like to say we did actually get it sorted, and Mary did become a lovely manager.
Mm,
But when the team was put together, because it was there was a big internal change in terms of hierarchy and all that kind of stuff. And I think it came from the fact that Mary wasn't used to having that many teams, and obviously they were having issues with their own management and what was going on, and it was being, no, she wasn't taking it out on us, but we definitely felt the ripple effect of her behaviours. But by actually addressing it, and we addressed it through another manager of her level,
mm,
someone that we knew she respected, and it wasn't me. I was too new to the company, but out of our team, we said, go and speak to that person and just say, can you have a word with Mary? Because when she comes in a bad mood, it really impacts us all. Mary had no idea. Mary
Yeah,
had no idea that her behavior was having that much of an impact.
yeah.
And wow,
Isn't it?
did it change? It
Yeah,
really changed when we did. But it's about, like you say, creating the space where it's like, I don't feel I'm the right person to have the conversation directly with Mary. Right, where in this organization, and you might not be in a big organization, it might be a small organization, but somebody needs to have that conversation with Mary because Mary's
absolutely.
behavior is impacting everybody.
Yeah. And isn't it true? So it's that when there's something about you, typically you're always the last person to know, isn't
Yeah.
it? Everyone around you knows it, and the looks and the this, and sometimes you get a feeling that something isn't quite right, but you can't place your finger on it because no one's actually telling you. So it goes both ways, isn't it? My behavior may be quite impacting negatively on others. However, unless I know, I may not be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't stop to look in the mirror at our own behaviors. And that's why I say to people, what's it like to be on the receiving end of you? Just pause. The power of a pause, and it doesn't have to be long, seconds. Just to, if you're running late for a meeting, don't go running, say it's an in-person meeting, don't go rushing into that meeting room going, sorry I'm late, and causing a fuss. Just pause while you're outside and go, right, now let's just go in quietly, take my seat. Sorry I'm late. Yeah.
Yeah. What would it take to understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of you?
To ask other people that you know can trust, but also maybe people that you think, I don't get on with Mary. Me and Mary don't have a great relationship.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I just need to buy Mary a coffee and sit down and say, what's it like to work with me? Because baseline for me is personality. And it could simply be that we're just polar opposites. I'm outgoing and people focused, you're reserve and task focused. And if I just sat down and said that, I did it myself. When I started this business, I did it myself, and I got inspirational, and I asked people one word, and one word I got was scary.
Hmm.
I said, okay, I'm loving the inspiration. I'm loving all this. It's feeding my mouth, but I need to understand why I come across as scary. What is
Yeah.
it about me? Because that's the bit that never we can't change who we are. We
Yeah.
are who we are. But what I can be is the more aware I am of my own behavior, the more flexible, the more I can adapt when I'm with people who are polar opposite to me.
Absolutely. And that is very important. But one of the things that I also say to people when you go asking, please be ready to receive.
Okay.
Because the number of times that people do ask, and then when somebody go, okay, they've asked me, so I'm going to tell, and the person is, what? Whoa, they said that, and then take offense at that. That then sometimes let people close down when you approach them for feedback or for how do I come across to you? Should I really be honest about how you come across to me and tell me you are scary? Or should I just tell you great, like everyone else is saying? And so I think it's quite important that when you do go and ask, whether it's your team members, your colleagues, or your managers, or even people who report into you, how do I come across? Make sure you are ready for some of the answers that come out. Because, for example, if I just use the example you just cited, if you're not prepared for somebody to say something out of great, incredible, amazing, and
I
step
wasn't.
into the scary, then you go, what
I
are you
was.
on about? And you take an
Yeah.
offense at that individual for saying something different.
I wasn't prepared for scary, but what I was, because I was asking, and like you say, you've got to be ready for it. I needed to know why. What was it about my behaviors that made me scared? There was a particular thing we used to do in the workplace that that's why I came across as scary, because that's the first time they met me. And so
Mm,
every time they met me, they thought of me like that. And I was like, wow, I had never realized that. And actually, when we sat and had a coffee and a conversation about it, that scary part now was like down here.
yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Be ready for it. But if you get something that shocks you or that doesn't massage your ego or says something that I don't agree with, it's that other person's opinion. Find out why that is there, because that's what you can work on. I'm not going to change how I am when I do stuff like that, but I am now very aware to read other, and this is before I did all the behavior stuff. So I had no idea what it was like to be on the receiving end of me. And I can be quite honest. Yeah, exhausting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think self-awareness is a really important thing, and it's a useful skill, I think, for everyone within the workplace, but more importantly, for leaders to have, because being self-aware, you can almost certainly become aware of how your behavior affects others around you. And you can also quite quickly pick on behaviors of other people around you, and you should be, as a good leader, able to then put in strategies, mechanism, etc., to help you and your team deal with any impact that these behaviors would have and stop things from escalating before they get there, right? One of the things that you say is behind every opinion is a human, right? And behind every human is a lifetime of experience.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Because if I just listen to your opinion and then dismiss it because it's different to mine, I'm not going to grow. I'm going to stay in my own bubble. But
Hmm.
actually, if I listen to your opinion, and it's just your opinion, my favorite color's red, your favorite color may not be.
Yeah.
I just want to, if I hear about where you've come from and how you got to that opinion, I've grown. My comfort zone's grown a little bit. My mind has stretched. As a human, I've become more rounded. I've probably become more accepting of other people. So when I then come across someone else that's had the same type of life's experience, I'm more open and I'm more receptive to them. And therefore my world and my shutters just become so much wider. Otherwise I live in a box of Vicky O'Farrell, and that's quite exhausting.
Yeah. And I think linked to that is also that leads to better understanding, right? And better understanding of people makes difficult conversations easier.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay, so the next bit I would like us to explore is behavior and workplace culture.
Okay.
Okay, so can organizations actually change behavior?
Can the organization change behavior, or can the organization change its employees' behavior?
So looking at it from, so culture generally in the workplace is the way we do things, yeah? It's how we
Yeah,
do things here. And if you look at it closely, it's a collection of behaviors
yeah,
that makes the workplace culture.
yeah,
So if you think about, let's say, where people have a culture of not being able to speak up, speak freely, show up as themselves, or in other words, oh God, here comes Vicky. Let me look that way and look busy so that they don't come and talk to me type thing. And sometimes it's not just one person in isolation.
yeah,
It becomes gradually, especially where it's gone unnoticed, unchallenged, or unaddressed. You find that it becomes the way, the culture of that
yeah,
organization. So
yeah.
in that context, can organizations actually change?
Absolutely.
behaviors.
They can change their behaviors, but it takes some doing if depending on how long it's been going on for, because what you've just described could end up becoming quite a toxic culture. People don't stay. So I would say if you have high staff turnover, or your staff just aren't engaged, and everything's a struggle and everything's hard work, but to change it, and this isn't me doing a sales pitch at all, you probably need to bring in somebody external to do it, because if it's very hard to change things if you've been instrumental in being part of the culture that's turned negative. Yeah. But then if all organizations were amazing, Mary, you and me wouldn't have a job.
All our jobs will be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, what role do various individuals, and I want to look at individuals from role point of view, right? Employees, managers, senior leaders, etc. What role do they play in shaping and forming the culture of the organization through their behaviors?
Huge. Everyone plays a part. It's not just the managers and the leaders. If you get somebody, you get a new employee in, and they might be like in sales, they might be the top salesperson. And so therefore the managers are like, oh my God, this person's amazing because they're top salesperson. Yeah, but they're an absolute dick. I can't bear them being in the office. I don't want to work with them. So actually someone else's behavior is impacting, and it's not a manager, it's not a leader, it's not the CEO. It's actually a new employee that's come in that's caused that. No, disrespectful behavior needs to be addressed, but I don't think people realize that they are being disrespectful.
Mm,
I have worked in an organization, I've worked in sales, where somebody was just an arrogant little poop. I'm trying to be polite because it's a podcast. I was just like, I don't want to work on their team. They're just, no, they're not helpful. And actually, I think they knew that they were, but they actually liked that behavior. But then there are some people in this world that you can't help.
mm, yeah. And I think, on that note, what positive behaviors or desired behaviors can people demonstrate within the workplace to create a psychologically safe, good working environment for everyone?
Respect,
Mm,
showing that they understand
mm,
and that they care. You
yeah,
don't need to be somebody that's, oh, it's okay. You don't need to be like agony Aunt Mary, where everyone comes to you with their problems. That's not it at all. But you
mm,
need to show that I respect your opinions. I respect who you are. You're human. You have your own lived experiences, why you've come to the conclusion that you have. It's
mm,
different to mine. That's fine. And when there's a problem, but also knowing who you can turn to, like say, when there is a problem, who do I need to turn to get this solved? Or when there's something to celebrate, or where's all my team to celebrate? Where's my people of influence that will go and get everyone else to G up and get this atmosphere going?
mm,
Knowing when people know what they can come to you for. Mary's a problem solver. Vicky's an energy giver. We all have different creative ways of being in the workplace. When people know that, that makes a good human.
absolutely. Thank you, Vicky. And as I said at the very beginning, this was going to be an amazing conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. I'd like to close the podcast with your three top tips for our listeners or for our audience.
The first one is understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of you by asking people around you that you know can trust, but find someone that you perhaps struggle with, because that will be the bit that you need to work on. Understand that behind every opinion is a human, and behind every human is a lifetime of experience that got them there. And then finally, in a world that is so fast at everything, just remember that you don't need to react at the speed in which you receive. Pause and reflect.
Excellent. On that note, thank you very much, Vicky, for joining us today. And thank you very much for tuning in and for listening. If anything has touched your heart today or has made you pause and reflect, would love to hear from you, and see you again next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.